What's up, everyone? Alex here, and welcome to my little corner of the internet. I wanted to talk a little bit about gender alignment and how my identity plays into that concept. Gender alignment is basically feeling a connection to a gender without being that gender. Some people can also be aligned with gender qualities, being masculine aligned, feminine aligned, but not male aligned or female aligned. So you can be aligned with genders or with gender qualities. It varies like every other term. I do not consider myself aligned with any concept, including my own gender. I'm not aligned with any kind of qualities like neutral, aberrant, maverin, etc. Despite those being part of my gender experience, I reject the concept of alignment, which means that I don't subscribe to anything like that. I don't consider myself unaligned, but just rejecting the whole thing entirely. So I'm not aligned with anything, and I don't consider it as part of my identity. So I don't even call myself unaligned. I am Stellarian in its original definition, Stellarian being the description for non-binary people who are unaligned or who reject alignment. And in my case, rejection entirely. So why do I reject alignment? Alignment sets up too much expectations for my gender. I'm afraid people would assume that I have to have a specific gender experience if I'm aligned with a gender, despite the fact that alignment has a very specific definition. You're connected to a gender but are not that gender. But I still feel like if I say I'm aligned with a certain gender, that I feel connection to a certain gender, that I must be that gender. And then there's an expectation of the types of labels I might use because they think that I have that gender, or the type of gender presentation that I might have because I am aligned with a gender. So I don't want assumptions of gender. I like, even if I'm aligned with concepts like masculinity, I do have a somewhat masculine presentation at times, but I feel like being masculine aligned carries the assumption that I'm going to have a masculine gender or a masculine presentation at all times, and I'm trying to avoid that. Alignment can be weaponized. If I say that I am non-binary aligned, people might assume that I do not have any kind of connection to any binary concept. I am still a man, and while I am a non-binary man is still a binary concept, and I still find myself falling within binarity in some part. It's a very complicated mess. That's why things like the gender binary suck, because sometimes it just sets up expectations and stereotyping toward people who have any proximity to it. I also don't want to be man aligned and then somebody assumes that maybe I am not really non-binary, that I'm partially non-binary. I couldn't possibly be non-binary if I'm aligned with a binary concept. So nothing like that. I also have to bring up that years ago on another blog of mine, back when I still had my gaming channel, I had finally kind of taken the first steps to talking about gender stuff on my blog. The blog was centered around everything I did on YouTube for YouTube gaming, and a lot of what I reblogged there had to do with gaming and YouTube stuff. But I had talked about, not being male aligned despite being a demi boy, and somebody had sent me an ask being how are you a demi boy and not male aligned? And it's well, I reject the concept of alignment. Alignment doesn't apply to me. It doesn't apply to every non-binary person. The term Stellarian was coined with non-binary people in mind, and then it had counterparts, Lunarian and Solarian, being female aligned and male aligned. And it was for non-binary people to talk about their experiences with being aligned or having a lack of alignment. So I think the assumption started turning into every non-binary person is aligned, or every non-binary person should consider themselves unaligned if they're not aligned with anything. But some people are either just entirely apathetic to the concept or reject the concept. So there is no unaligned. There's just nothing there. Calling someone who rejects alignment, like calling someone like me not aligned, is like calling a whale not a dog. And it's like, that's true, but what do you mean by that kind of thing? I used a similar example before. It's like, yeah, it's true, it's not a dog. There's no sense in making that comparison because it's such a different type of mammal. Alignment also alignment is connection to something without being that thing. I'm not neutral aligned. I don't relate to neutral genders. I don't have a connection to neutral genders. I literally have a neutral gender. My neutral gender is not neutral aligned. It's just a neutral gender. It's a pora gender, but it is neutral. The same goes for something like being male aligned. I don't feel a connection to malehood. I don't relate to malehood. I am a man. And I don't like alignment being applied to either of my genders. Also, sometimes lack of alignment includes like using the binary as comparison. So being unaligned typically doesn't just mean no alignment at all. Unaligned usually specifically means not aligned with either binary gender. And I don't like using the binary as a focal point to what I am. I don't like to say my gender is not the binary. It is not related to binary concepts. I have unbinary genders. Like, I don't like saying that my genders are in some way comparable to the binary or should be defined by how they sit outside the binary. I know I say that I'm non-binary. It's the most common word for that type of experience. There are alternative words for non-binary and abinary because a lot of people don't like using the word binary in their terms, and they don't like the idea of being seen as like not this thing. Sometimes people don't want their genders to be defined by what they're not. So I'm going off on a tangent. I reject the entirety of alignment as a concept. So it's not that I'm not aligned with the binary. It's just not even in the realm of possibilities for me. So that's also why I don't like using unaligned. I don't want to say that I don't have an alignment to the binary. It's just that kind of terminology does not work for me. For other people, yeah. Alignment is such a useful concept. When I say I reject the concept, it's not that I think it's a problematic concept and that we got to do away with it. It's that it does not apply to me and I don't want to use it as a way to categorize my genders or a way to describe my gender experience. I mean, there are non-binary people who want a way to talk about having an alignment to a gender or a connection to a gender without being that gender. And it's hard to explain that without the concept of alignment. There wasn't a term for that before where it's like, I'm non-binary, but like I feel connection to womanhood, or I'm non-binary and I feel connection to manhood. The assumption is like non-binary man, non-binary woman, or even just like you're non-binary, but like only a little bit. You're still just a man or a woman. So alignment is really helpful in this situation where it's like, no, I'm not a man. I am male aligned. I am not a woman. I am female aligned. And like, that's why I do like the concept of the Galactian alignments, where they've taken they've taken the like gendered terminology out of the name in favor of like a space theme name. It did start with Stellarian, Solarian, and Lunarian. And that was a way to say, being unaligned, being female aligned, being male aligned. That's like where the Galactian alignments kind of originated. They just weren't originally called that. People just kind of grouped these things together and then expanded on them. The same concept applied to the original 3 terms, where instead of saying male aligned, we were saying solarian. Instead of saying female aligned, we were saying lunarian. So we took the binary words out of these terms in favor of focusing more on why we have this word in the first place. Focusing more on, like, it doesn't have to have binary words, binary terms in the names of these terms. Like, we don't have to have the word woman or man in these terms. They're space themed because space is ungendered. And some people who are aligned with a certain gender might consider themselves ungendered. Just because you're aligned with something doesn't mean you're ungendered. Unaligned and ungendered, 2 different concepts. So somebody could be entirely genderless and be aligned with something that's not genderless. Anything, male, female, neutroi, apora, gender, maverick, any of them. So I don't know where my point was going, but alignment is an important concept. It's not something that applies to me, and it's not something I use for myself. In a perfect world, I don't even think I'd still use alignment as a thing for myself. Like, even if we did away with the focus on the binary, even if we did away with, the transphobia, the exersexism, and all that, even if, like, people stopped weaponizing the idea of alignment, I still think I wouldn't use alignment for myself. I wouldn't find a need for it. Alignment is a way for non-binary people to navigate a heavily gendered and a heavily binarized world. Like, that's important to some people. I have other ways of navigating people navigating a society that focuses a little too heavily on the gender binary, on genderedness, on gender convention, etc. I have my own ways of navigating gender that doesn't require alignment. That can be the case for some people, or some people might use alignment as a concept and use that as a way to describe their genders. People could be aligned with more than one thing as well. But for me, just none of it. I went to go fix my binder and I heard a tear, but then I realized I'm wearing one of my old binders, so I don't have to be scared. I'm wearing 2 different materials that I don't know how to sew if I rip. Yeah, I think I popped a seam in my binder. I did. I feel it. That's okay. This is one of the old ones. I just bought new binders. It's fine. I wear these when I'm in the house or when I'm doing yard work because I don't have to worry about anything. It's fine. It's good. You probably heard the crack, though. That was me. That was me popping a seam, because why not? Why not add that to my very weird week? Other than that, yeah, gender alignment. What is gender alignment to you? Do you reject the concept of it? Do you not use it? Did you not know what it was before this video? Like, tell me all about alignment if you have a gender alignment or anything, really. Anyone can be aligned with anything now, but the focal point was non-binary people. Originally, the concept of alignment was for non-binary people to talk about having connections to genders other than entirely outside of the binary genders. So, yeah, I mean, nowadays I think anybody can be aligned with anything. I believe that gender's pretty flexible in that way. You don't have to be non-binary to use alignment terminology for yourself. I just don't think it's very common, just because it had its start in non-binary spaces and that was like exclusively where it was coming from. So, but other than that, also, if I'm talking too fast, it's because my coffee is kicked in. I'm on my second cup and I'm just going through it. I'm just doing my thing. Anyway, I am signing off for now. See you later.